Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Blankenhorn. I was the Hawkins Walker 2020 Tech Director during the campaign. If you're someone who's watching this that's been a Green for a while, that's gone to our annual national meetings, you'll recognize me as someone who has done systems work in the party for a few years. I call this workshop that I'm doing today the Gospel of Michael Dennis. Michael Dennis was a good friend of mine who I served as national co-chair of the Green Party with. They really turned me on to systems, and then they actually got a job at one of the systems we're going to talk about today and had to kind of step back from the party because they couldn't be actively involved with the client, basically. So they have, majorly stepped back, and I've taken over kind of their role of pushing systems as a important and central thing that we need to be focusing on, especially as a grassroots party. A little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a former national co-chair. I'm from Springfield, Illinois. I'm an educator by trade, preschool teacher with a degree in political philosophy. And the secretary of the Illinois Green Party, an advisor to the senior advisor to the Young Eco-Socialists, which is the youth caucus of the Green Party. If you're under 35 and you aren't a member of the Young Eco-Socialists, I highly recommend you get involved. They're one of the really great parts of the party. All big national organizations can be kind of a mess sometimes. And in my youth, coming up in the party, the Young Eco-Socialists were a really good kind of safe space for me, a good home base that I could operate out of. So I definitely recommend people get involved with them, and you can find them at yesgp.org. Today's workshop is going to be on systems and tech for grassroots campaigns. And I think it's important that we, really think about Green campaigns as grassroots campaigns that are fundamentally different from the campaigns being ran by the Republicans and Democratic Party. From my few decades of political organizing, what I've learned is that the Republicans and Democrats generally aren't good campaigners. They just have a whole bunch of money, like a ridiculous. I mean, they raised $1 billion in the last presidential election, right? Like, and that's just presidential. That's not even getting down the line. So it's just they just have a huge amount of money. If you look at the social media strategy of a major Republican or Democratic candidate, it's largely based on ads. They just pay and pay and pay and pay and pay and pay and pay. We can't do that. I'll be doing on June 6th, I'll be part of a workshop on campaign communications. Part of it will be kind of like press releases, reaching out to media, new, alternative, all that kind of stuff. And then part of it will shift and focus on social media. So we'll get, there will be a fuller deep dive on that. This is part of the Green Socialist Organizing Project's campaign trainings. We're coming into a midterm election cycle in 2022. Green campaigns are just getting underway. In Illinois, we start petitioning next week to get candidates on the ballot. So it's, we're starting off with systems because it's one of the really key things you need to have set up from day one. If otherwise, you're just going to have to redo the work. You're going to have to set them up eventually, and you're going to have to set them up when the train's moving, instead of having it all set up at, when you're getting in the formational stages of your campaign. So today I'm going to share my. You hear screams. It's because there's a 9-month-old downstairs. I just heard him scream. Happy screams, but screams.
Happy screams.
He's finding his voice.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So today, campaign systems and tech tools to help your grassroots campaign reach more people, right? Because that's what elections are about, reaching people, connecting with voters. Um, there's a word touches that you often hear in political organizing. And the idea is you need to get a certain number of touches with each voter in order to convert them into someone who will actually vote for you. So a touch could be knocking on their door. A touch could be talking to them at an event. A touch could be sending them an email. A touch could be having a volunteer phone bank and talk to them about something, whether that be just informational about your campaign, turning them out to an event, soliciting donations, that kind of thing. And so the general idea is if you get about 7 touches, you can convert someone from just, a constituent into a voter. And obviously that's just kind of an arbitrary number. It's based on experience, but some people will take 2 touches because they really dig what you have to say, and some people will take 15 touches. And especially with low resource grassroots campaign, sometimes you have to give thought of whether those 15 touches are worth it, or if you need to go find another 5 to 7. But that, the campaign or talking to people is what campaigns are about. So that's what these, the systems workshop is hopefully going to help us find some tools to help us do it more effectively. So what are systems? Systems are tools, generally digital in modern times, that help us organize and campaign more effectively and efficiently. I think it's really, really important that people understand systems are not a replacement for on-the-ground organizing. Systems, they're tools that can make a campaign more effective, but they can't replace a serious campaign that is engaging in the broader community. When I talk about social media, I often tell people that retweets don't vote, likes don't vote. These are things that happen, they can be touches, they can be real touches, but we need to find a way to get people involved in our campaigns in the real world, as well as engaging on social media. And too often people are looking for an easy way out of actually doing the hard work of organizing, right? People want that silver bullet, they want that shortcut, because the reality is when you look at a third party, when you look at a radical eco-socialist party like the Green Party that is really calling for transformational changes on a large scale, not only policy but economic systems, how we relate to each other, cultural changes, all that kind of stuff. We're not talking about just electing a new person and passing a slightly different law. We're talking about a radical change to society. That's a lot of work, right? And the scope of it is huge, and it can be very much debilitating at times when you look out and you're like, my opponents have billions of dollars, they control the media, they control the legislature, and they keep me off the ballot. And then the scope of, we need to fix our schools, we need to address the climate, we need to end war, we need to address poverty, there's just so much, right? It can be overwhelming. And so people often take a look, people want that shortcut. And it's just usually not there. Systems can make your organizing life easier, but they can't replace those real world activities, right? I can't phone bank my way to a win, most likely. COVID kind of changed things in that regard, right? We couldn't go knock doors in 2020. So we had to be phone calling, we had to be really engaging in social media, we had to be doing live streams, we had to be doing workshops and all that kind of stuff, because we had to make up for that, in my opinion, most important piece of campaigning, going out and talking one-on-one with people, because we just couldn't safely do it with COVID. Another thing I want to mention, Greens often have a well-placed affinity for open source systems. But we often lack the technical skills to realize it. So I really want to encourage, people not to bog down in, oh, but this is a corporate system and Facebook uses it, therefore it's bad. You know, Facebook's using it because it's offering some kind of project management skill, you know, abilities. It is bringing something to the table that lets them as a business operate more effectively. Yes, open source is great in terms of our values, right? No one's profiting off of it. We can change it and alter it and edit it to our specific needs, and we can build something that's really for us. But it takes a lot of knowledge, a lot of coding, a lot of things that, frankly, we could be spending that time knocking doors rather than doing it. So where I think the Green Party is at this point right now, we shouldn't be focusing on building our own green alternatives, which is often something that's brought up, and it's a well-placed thought, but it's just, in many cases, it's just not within our abilities at the moment. So we really, you know, people just we need to find what works right now, especially because these, you know, commercially available options are generally a lot user-friendly, a lot smoother, things like that. So that's a big piece. As I work through, and I'll stop after different sections, you know, I'll stop at different times, and people can ask questions about specific things. But I'm going to lay out a number of different systems. Some of them brand themselves as all-in-one solutions, right? They think of themselves as jack of all trades, but jacks of all trades are generally masters of none. So that's not necessarily always the best bet. A lot of times with systems, whether it be for affordability reasons or usability reasons or effectiveness reasons, we tend to kind of stack things and create a suite of things that interact. So when you're building your systems, it's important to make sure that your different systems can work with one another. That can make your life a whole lot easier, right? If you have a beautiful and awesome volunteer form, but it doesn't integrate with your database, that means someone's going to have to sit in front of a computer and enter every volunteer in, check off every box in your database that you want them tagged with, as opposed to, if it integrates, it all goes straight in and that's automated. I'll talk about the end a little more, but one of the big things over the last few years that I've really been preaching in the party is that our national and state parties need to give serious consideration to systems as our primary resource, right? If you're running as a Republican or a Democrat, you've got the Republican Democratic National Committee, and then they each have Senate and congressional committees as well. And they can get hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of dollars that they can then funnel to candidates. Greens don't have that, right? We don't have that money. So how do we compete? How do we effectively use our money? And I'll give some specific details later. And at the end of the workshop, I've got a little rant about, you know, how state parties need to be providing most of what I'm talking about, not campaigns. So the basics. Where should we be setting up and utilizing its, you know, different systems in our campaign infrastructure? Everywhere, right? We need to see these tools as things that can make our lives easier. We need to see these tools as, you know, ways, and the automation and things that can come up with it, of ways of relieving labor, of removing monotonous tasks, of simplifying things, of making things safer and more effective. So some tools, like I said earlier, some tools will offer this wide range of features that fill more than one organizing area. And then some, but most likely, most campaigns, parties are going to need to kind of stagger a suite of tools. So some key areas: communications, internal and external. Like I said at the beginning, talking to people is what campaigns are about. How you get a vote is by engaging someone. You know, at this point in the American political system, I don't think there's many people that care what a candidate has to really say on a platform page on their website, right? We've all been lied to by politicians for so long. Trust in our system is so low That just having and Greens really need to kind of wrap their mind around this. Words ain't shit, right? Working class communities, especially, which are the large, non-voters every election are the largest voting bloc out there. And they're Republicans and Democrats like to, call them lazy and apathetic and whatnot. But these are largely working class people who've seen neither of our major parties help them, right? These are working class Black communities that voted for Obama and saw Black socioeconomic levels drop during his campaign, right? These are people who have, for lack of a better phrase, decided they're not going to participate in their own destruction anymore. They're tired of choosing who's going to hurt them, and so they've disengaged because they don't trust the system. And effective or not, it's a rational thing to do, right? When you've got two people beating on you, you don't say this one's better than the other. They're both beating on you. And then you get into the whole repression that we face in the United States with third parties. In Illinois, the congressional candidate in my district for the Democrats bragged when she turned in her petitions that she collected 6 times more than she needed to. Well, we'd have to collect 4 times more than her 6 times more just to get on the ballot, right? For a Republican and a Democrat in my district to run for the US House, it takes about 750 signatures. For a Green, a Libertarian, or an Independent, 16,000, right? From one congressional district. They literally keep us off the ballot because they put these levels of petitions. And same thing for president, we got to collect 25,000 in 90 days. That's 50,000 if we want to survive challenges. So in 2014 in Illinois, we collected 43,000 for governor, and we got thrown off the ballot, right? Almost 20,000 more signatures wasn't enough. In 2016, we collected 53,000, and we weren't challenged because it was just too many to challenge. So there's a whole lot of things that, play into our abysmal turnout rate, our abysmal political participation. But to overcome it, we're going to have to talk to people, right? And that means internally and externally. We're going to need to better organize with each other. And we're going to need to better and more effectively communicate outwardly to our constituents. Emma, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a question. If you can kind of just a little bit about that signature issue. Why is that the case? Why would you need so many signatures? Why?
Because the Republicans and Democrats control in every state the legislature and the executive. So it's one area where they are completely in collaboration, right? It's in both of their interests that it's only the two of them. And the Democrats have seemed to kind of really, their campaign strategy is we're not the Republicans, right? When people I call it negative voting instead of positive voting. The Democrats tend to run on stopping the Republicans, voting against something rather than voting being something that you're proactively expressing your values, right? How many millions, 99, over 90% of Democrats support Medicare for all, but they all voted against it because Joe Biden publicly does not support it, right? 60-something% of voters support a Green New Deal. Millions of voters voted against the Green New Deal, whether they voted for Joe Biden or they voted for Donald Trump. Neither of those people support aggressive action on climate change. So the two main, and it's often, you'll often hear things like spoilers brought up, where the idea is that Greens take votes away from Democrats. Because if we weren't on the ballot, the assumption is that our members would go and vote Democrat as a lesser evil. In 2016, exit polling showed that 60% of Greens would have stayed home rather than vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump if those were their only two options. I don't stay home, but I often undervote. If there's no one who I think deserves my vote, I don't vote in that place, and it will show up. And undervotes are a strategic way for people to say no. I don't accept any of these options.
So then the focus becomes more on the negative vote than the positive vote.
And that is what our political culture is now around, is voting against things. And the Republicans are the same way, right? Except they're generally whipping up emotions on social issues, right? Right now, CRT is destroying America, and gay folks are corrupting our youth. But they want you to vote against those things. Not that working class Republicans don't want the things that Republicans do, right? They don't want the working class to pay for tax breaks. They don't want the few jobs that are left in rural Republican areas to be outsourced. But they get worked up on a negative vote against social issues, and then the Democrats do the same on the other side. You've got it, as Greens, we hear every time, this election isn't the time for you to challenge. We hear it every election. Oh, we've got to stop Bush. Oh, we've got to stop Trump. We're always going to have to stop someone horrible because we have two horrible.
They basically just use hate speech to incite emotion, to dictate how they want people to vote, which based off of what you're saying, which I believe is based off of a negative vote. Anyway, okay. I appreciate you saying that.
It's an extortion-based political system, right? If you don't vote for us, the other party will do this awful thing. In 2020, there was no policy from the Republicans and the Democrats, right? And Trump and Biden just we have to stop the other one. They didn't talk about
they just went at it.
It was all personal. None of it was about policy alternatives to deal with these massive problems that we face as a society globally.
Nobody wants to solve problems. They just want to fight each other. It's like watching. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Their donors are making money, and they are making money off the problems, right? So in Illinois, we have what's considered a very progressive governor, and a lot of the things he has done are progressive. He's a billionaire. He owns Hyatt, the hotel chain. So he's made his money off exploiting service workers. He's made his money off investing in the oil and gas industry. He's made his money off investing in the defense industry. Those are his major investments that made him a billionaire, right? So he may be progressive, but he's a principal investor in the Dakota Access Pipeline. Not just somebody who had some stock, one of the biggest shareholders in a pipeline that's going to destroy our environment even further. So there's a vested interest from our leadership, because they represent the wealthy class. They don't represent working class people. They don't represent middle class people. They represent the capitalist class.
They represent the people who can afford the lawyers.
Yeah. Yep. So how do we overcome this, right? We go out and we talk to people, right? Because if you go and talking to your neighbors, you're going to find out that they have the same problems as you do. These bread and butter issues, right? Old school socialists called it sewer socialism, right? You deal with these issues that have a direct impact in their daily lives. Because here's the reality: if you're not gay marriage doesn't affect you in your day-to-day life, right? And so how do we get to people? We have to be better at communicating with them. Whether that be our communications through the media and the alternative media, or our direct communications with them. Another key area after communications is outreach and intake, right? We have to grow our campaigns. If you want to have a winning campaign, you need to have more supporters at the end than you had at the beginning, which means you need to be able to cast a wider net. You need to be able to bring people in who didn't know about you or didn't support you in the beginning. We need project and team management. If we're going to beat these giant corporate machines, we've got to be really efficient. We've got to be really dynamic and fluid, and we've got to be really creative. And that means we need to be really organized. We need to have our shit together. We need to be able to take in money and do fundraising. When I hit fundraising later, I'll tell Greens, and I'll say it right now, and I'll say it again later. Greens have to get over the idea that asking for money is bad, right? If we don't have money, we can't afford these systems. If we don't have money, we can't afford materials for outreach. If we don't have money, then we're exploiting people to run our campaigns. People who run campaigns, if COVID hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been Howie's tech director because I had a full-time job, right? And we didn't have the money for me to quit, and I couldn't afford to quit my almost decade-long employment to work on a short-term political campaign. So we need to make sure that why do we need money? So we can pay our staff, so we can pay our team members. And that doesn't mean that volunteers aren't an integral part, but you need key people to be, having at least a stipend. Because when you're all volunteer ran and something on your plate needs to be dropped because you're overwhelmed, you're going to drop the volunteer work. You're going to take care of your family. You're going to take care of your job. And if the Green Party stuff doesn't happen, I'll try to get it to it next week. Just giving someone a small stipend changes that dynamic. I now have to commit that 5 hours to the Green Party because I said I would, and they're paying me $250 to do it, right? We need to be able, we need systems for design, for materials, for merchandise. And design and materials in particular, again, it's great if you have someone who can do that job well and will do it for free. But these are artists we're talking about, right? And their work and their labor should be respected as best we can. And Greens can enter into this with an understanding of we're never going to have the money to pay everyone in our campaign a living wage. With the Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker campaign, we set up a stipend, and everyone that was in key campaign positions got the same stipend, from campaign manager to social media director to outreach coordinator and volunteer coordinator. We said from the beginning, we can't pay you a wage, and it went up and it went down depending on how our coffers were doing, depending on how the workload was. Right, so campaigns need money, and we'll get to that later. So the first thing that, in my opinion, campaigns need to get set up is called a CRM. In the corporate world, that's customer relationship management. Contact relationship management is another term that is more appropriate for us. But as a green campaign, the very first thing you should do is talk to your state party, your local party, and see if they provide an email, if they provide a database, if they provide marketing system. Most, if not all, green state parties have some kind of database. In some parties, it may be as simple as a spreadsheet. Some parties are like my own, like in Illinois, like the National Party, are paying commercially available CRMs like NationBuilder or ActionNetwork to provide these services. And then some parties, like I think Indiana and Ohio run CiviCRM, which is an open source outlet. The Howie Hawkins campaign runs CiviCRM as well. We'll get to that in a minute. So before you go and start building your own campaign infrastructure, you should see what's already there, so we're not building in parallel, right? Because how many times have I said the word efficient? We've got to be efficient. And if we have two different entities that are both green entities and are working towards the same goal, and they're setting up parallel infrastructure, that means we're paying double. That means we're spending twice the time doing things. And any green campaign should be asking about a contact list first and foremost, right? You don't want to start from scratch. There's an existing green base out there. So you should be, signing your NDAs. And if you're a state party and you're not asking people to sign an NDA, get a simple NDA together, so that people don't, just a warning so people don't abuse your list. But you should be asking your state party about, hey, do you have a contact list? And when they start responding, that's when, okay, cool. What other kind of systems do you offer? In Illinois, where I'm the secretary, and I've spent the last 5 years really implementing a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today. When we recognize a candidate, they get an email from me. It has a list of all the different systems that we have to offer them. We'll set up your website, we'll host it, we'll give you a CRM, we'll give you the ability to do email marketing. We have an account with a phone banking company. These are all, you get into our project management system. These are all the things that when you become an official green candidate, you get from us, right? And they help you run your campaign effectively, and they save you from starting from scratch. So this is a conversation you should be having. Like I said, I'll hit it again at the end. If you're here from a state party, you should be asking what kind of resources and systems do we provide now, and what could we provide? Since the CRM section is on databases should live beyond the campaign, right? Campaigns have a finite lifespan. They begin and then they end. And something like a database, something like a lot of these systems, project management, fundraising, all that stuff, a lot of these systems really need to be long-term. They need to be there whether someone's running or not, because the party's using them as well. So we should make sure that our parties are integrating a lot of these systems. If a campaign comes up with uses a system and it worked really great for them, transfer it over, right? Most of these systems, all you got to do is change the credit card on who's paying and the email address on who owns it. But if something worked really well, have the state party take it over. And one thing I'm going to say on CRMs before I get into specifics is do not use, in all caps and bold, do not use the NGP van if you are a green. It's the Democrat CRM. So if you use the NGP van or minivan or any of their little side splits that come off of it, you're giving all your data to the Democratic Party. Everything you collect on the Green Party is going to funnel into the people who repress us, right? And frankly, as someone who's used the van as a community organizer in the past, it's clunky and not great anyway. I was able to successfully kill myself for about 4 years when I left. But then I voted again and they found out I was alive. But it did make a whole cycle where I got no phone calls from Democrats or no text messages or emails because I deleted all my information. So like I said earlier, elections are about voters and campaigns need to make and contact and track voters. Your CRM is your campaign's contact database. It's an essential part of any successful campaign. If you don't know who you're talking to, when you're talking to, how you're talking to them, and what they're saying to you, it's going to be hard to connect with supporters, hard to turn citizens into voters in a strategic and organized way. You can still happen into it, right? But with a CRM and a solid data policy, that person that you met at an event that was really excited in your campaign, when they just gave you their email on a business card, if you go home and you do nothing with it, it's whether or not you remember to call them when something's important. If you go home and you enter it into your CRM database, they get every email now. They get on phone banking lists, right? They get outreach for the next event that's coming up, and you can go into there and you can say, this person, is interested in activism, so we need to tell them about every time we have a public event. So the major function of CRMs and political campaigns is outreach to voters and supporters. Most of the time, this needs email. Email is king in political campaigning. It's less personal, but you can reach a whole lot of people with a whole lot more bang for your buck than you can other systems or other methods. Because of this, most CRMs at a bare minimum offer email marketing features, though many offer a lot more. Some of the other ones we'll see in a minute are, like I said, email marketing, donation processing, contact intake, so volunteer forms, that kind of thing, canvassing and walk sheets, and event management. So NationBuilder, when I said this is the gospel of Mike Dennis, NationBuilder is where Mike Dennis now works. NationBuilder is a CRM. It's used by the National Green Party and many state parties throughout the country. Though largely due to cost, there has been a move away from it in recent years. So pros, it's an all-in-one platform. It's got a wide range of features. It handles your website. It takes your donation. It gives you your volunteer intake forms, and it's all integrated into their database. They are a database first platform, right? They are database engineers who then started build. This is where the jack of, master of none comes in. They are a master of databases, and then they started kind of piling other features on top. So like their web design is not great, things like that. They are designed specifically for political and advocacy work. That means they're well integrated with useful campaign data. They can help you with things like, voter rolls and automatically IDing what districts your contacts are in and things like that. And because they're widely used in the Green Party, there's a decent support. They have a good support system anyway. As a paying customer, you get tech support. But in the Green Party, because it's so widely used, there's people around who can give you a little more personal help, who can dive in a little deeper. I am not one of those people. I am one of the main advocates for leaving NationBuilder. But that said, I know a lot of really good people in the party who are really good at NationBuilder. The cons, like I said, not all features are equal. Some features such as web design are lacking. In the web design department, they break with industry norms. They have their own way of doing things, which means if you're like me and you spent 2 decades doing web design on and off, my 2 decades of experience doesn't easily transfer into NationBuilder. It's incredible, which is incredibly frustrating. Because they're so good at databases, it can be overwhelming, right? Every little thing that happens gets a tag. So you could have activists with hundreds of tags. Every time they phone banked, they got a tag. So if you've got an active phone banker, now you've got 100 phone bank tags with very specific, information, and it may not necessarily easily show up if you just say who phone banks, because they're all unique. It's not overly user friendly, especially on the website, and it's expensive. This is the primary reason that Greens are moving away from it. You pay based on how many contacts you have in your database. So the more you grow, the more expensive it becomes. The Green Party US, for example, can't afford to load their whole database at once. So we have offline databases, and they swap lists at predetermined times so that they don't get pinged for having more users when the billing day comes. And the same thing, when I don't know what happened in 2020, but I know in the past with presidential campaigns, when the party got those presidential campaigns lists from the campaign when it was over, they couldn't load them all in. They were too big. So we're pricing ourselves out of this system. Obviously, if we were effectively fundraising through this system, that might not matter. But in Illinois, especially, we moved away in particular for cost reasons. We moved to ActionNetwork. ActionNetwork is a CRM that's getting a lot more use in the Green Party. I was introduced to it by the New Jersey Green Party. I've moved Illinois into it, and I've done presentations for a few other states about using it. It's specifically for progressive organizations. Groups like the World Wildlife Fund use it. And a lot of these, in American politics, not-for-profits, C3s and C4s are huge, are the main users of these systems, right? More so than the Republicans and the Democrats have each built their own, and so they're not using these. But like NationBuilder, ActionNetwork offers a wide range of features. It's much more affordable. We spend a third of what we did since we switched per month. And in my opinion, they are better at their wide range. Their database is not as good as NationBuilder, but like I said, NationBuilder is a database-centric place. Their web integration, their ability to take in, and they call them actions. Their actions are amazing, an amazing way to bring new supporters into your database automatically. So it's an all-in-one platform for pros. It's got highly customizable reports and queries, which lets you do a lot of really cool filtering. And then you can plug those things into automation stuff. So like when a new person signs up for your contact, just signs up to get your emails on your website, they get their automatic thanks for responding or thanks for signing up response that comes. But you can set up an automated ladder that says 3 days after they get that, send them this email. 7 days after, send them this. 10 days after, send them this. And you can do the same thing with like an event. If someone RSVPs and goes to an event, thanks for coming. The day after the event, thanks for coming. Here's the video that we took of it. Here's our press release we put out about it, right? And then you can have it set up so the next time that there's an event, they get a notification automatically. You don't have to mess with it. So they have a really good reports and automation systems. Like NationBuilder, they're designed for political advocacy work. So when you enter a person and their address, it automatically tells you what congressional district they're in, what state house district they're in, what state senate district they're in. And they can you can pay them to get shape files for even like city wards and things like that and overlay them into your system. I have to email ActionNetwork tonight because Illinois' congressional districts are basically constantly in court because the Democrats gerrymandered them so bad. And so they haven't updated to the 2022, but we start petitioning on Wednesday, I think. So we need them to update that for us, whether they like it or not. It integrates with most website platforms, especially WordPress, and it's very, very affordable. Most green campaigns could start off at free, and I would generally recommend people upgrade to the $10 a month. But for anything short of like a congressional or anything smaller than a congressional or Senate or statewide governor race, that $10 a month is probably going to be more than enough. Campaigns, Illinois, we pay for the next level up, but it gives us a parent-child relationship so that our chapters are integrated in as children under our larger database. So when you sign up with the Cook County Green Party, all your data goes straight up into the Illinois Green Party. And when you sign up with the Illinois Green Party and you put Cook County as your address, all of your data goes down. And so it automatically is making sure that all of our different subgroups as a party get it. But for most campaigns, you don't need that, right? Most campaigns don't need to segregate their members into areas and regions. And if you have a real serious campaign going, right? You've got volunteers that are so large in number that you need to be able to segregate them by more than just running a report, sending your email based on county or something. So super affordable. The only real major con that I have after over a year of using ActionNetwork is that it's an opt-in only contact list. So what that means is if you buy the voter list for your district from your Board of Elections, you can't put those people in and start emailing them because they want to preserve their reputation with particularly Google. And lots of people you'll hear have problems with. They sent an email and it ended up in Google's in their promotions folder. And that happens because you're mass mailing. And so how ActionNetwork tries to avoid that is by saying no one but people who explicitly said, please email me, can be added. So it kind of limits your list a little, but from my perspective, for most green campaigns, ActionNetwork is where they should be looking if there's nothing provided by the state, because it's super affordable and it's really powerful. I talked about CiviCRM earlier. CiviCRM is an open source CRM, really, really powerful, but not user friendly. And you have to have the coding skills to make it happen. You have to host it yourself. So the pros are if you have the skill, you can build exactly what you want, right? We have one of the things that happens in Illinois is people will often come to me and say, I don't like how this system works. Well, I'm sorry, but this is a multi-million-dollar corporation and we pay them $100 a month. Like, they're not going to completely change their system for us, right? We're pretty small potatoes and we may not be using it how they intended it to be ideally used. So if you really want something to work exactly how you want it, you can build it in CiviCRM. You can offer a full suite of features like NationBuilder or ActionNetwork, but it's kind of done a la carte via modules, where you install your basic CiviCRM and then you kind of start adding supplemental things to it and getting them connected. The cons are it's a heavy learning curve. You've got to have some pretty serious database and technical skills to get it set up and to get the different modules installed and then communicating properly with each other. One thing I will say is once you learn it, it's less user-friendly. It's no less user-friendly than any of the other ones I've talked about, right? It's just different and the setup is hard. You do have to handle your own hosting, which means you're also responsible for the data security. And there's no centralized support system. There is a strong user community and third-party vendors, but you're not paying for it, right? It's like your free Gmail account. If something happens, there's no Google tech support for your free Gmail account. If you've got G Suite, yeah, you can get some support, but free tools, something goes wrong in Facebook, there's really no recourse, right? That's just not how those companies work. And it's kind of the same way here, except there's a large user base. So the Hawkins Walker campaign made the conscious decision to start developing a green CiviCRM in our 2020 campaign. And by the end of the campaign, we were collecting all donations, sending all of our emails, getting all of our volunteer form intakes. So really a lot of the big stuff was happening through Civi. I would say our install is about halfway to where it needs to be. And that's after we put 50 grand into it, right? So if we get another 50 grand that we can put into CiviCRM, we could have a green CRM and we could stop worrying about the debate between NationBuilder and ActionNetwork and all that. And we could have something that's designed and functioning for us. So for that reason, long term, I think, party-wide should be a green CiviCRM should be something we're talking about. But for an individual campaign, unless you have someone with the experience, it's a whole lot of work for something that's going to end in a year, right, when your campaign's over, unless you're working with your state party to hand it over or something. I was told years ago that Greens spend about $50,000 on NationBuilder collectively, because the national party pays for theirs, and then Texas pays for theirs, and then New York pays for theirs, and then California pays for theirs. And so this is that parallel thing I'm talking about, right? We're all paying for our own systems rather than having a collective system that we share. And that $50,000, like I said, could get us CiviCRM in a green-oriented way. So long-term, our national, our state, and our local parties and campaigns need to be looking at developing this. And then once it's developed, state parties, local parties, campaigns can rent usage for a nominal fee, which will pay for a database administrator to actually oversee the whole thing. Because like I've said, there's no support when something breaks. You need someone who knows what they're doing, and we should pay that person. I guess the second easiest, the second lowest rung, in my opinion, of CRM would be Constant Contact or MailChimp. The lowest realm would be how we used to do it, a spreadsheet on someone's computer or a Google Doc or a Google Sheet, right? But I would very much, unless you're running for like small town park board where you only need 100 votes and you've only got 500 constituents, you might be able to pull a spreadsheet off with those people. But even 500 people is a lot of fields in a spreadsheet. even 100 people. So I would, if someone's operating off a spreadsheet, I'd say at least get MailChimp, right? Because then you can send emails. And the other thing is, if you're running from a spreadsheet, you're copy and pasting all your emails into Google, that stuff's getting flagged as spam immediately if you're mass sending out of a free Google account. Constant Contact, MailChimp, just like the other CRMs, do their due diligence to, as best as they can, keep you out of that spam folder, though they're not always successful. The pros are you can engage in basic email marketing. MailChimp, I know you get up to 2,000 contacts for free, right? So in Illinois, we actually have a MailChimp that's for our press list. Because ActionNetwork, which we use, is opt-in, and these people in the press haven't opted in. So we have this parallel system where we have to talk to the press. It's super easy to use. If you can use a word processor, you can build and send an email in MailChimp or Constant Contact. And they also offer embeddable sign-up forms, so you can at least automate when someone signs on your website, getting them into the database. That said, once you pass 2,000 people, you're going to start getting really prohibitively expensive, to the point that, you know, the 10,000 or the $10 a month of ActionNetwork makes a whole lot of sense. There's probably hundreds of dollars to get your MailChimp upgraded. And obviously, it's the kind of the lower end of the spectrum on CRM, you're going to have a lot less tools working out of it. So anybody have any CRM questions? I'll also say, if someone's with a state party, I'm more than happy to schedule a time to talk, direct, these are the things my state party needs, and help state parties work through this on an individual basis, and not just, on a workshop with everybody listening. Okay, so most of those CRMs handle our fundraising, right? The point of a list is to use it, right? And whether that means sending those emails or asking for money. Too many greens have lists, but they don't use them, or they underutilize them, right? Even in my own state party, our regular contact with our members through our email lists kind of varies, right? Sometimes we'll be regularly contacting them, and then there will be lulls. It kind of depends on who's taking on that role and their energy and availability levels. But we can't build, we can't grow, we can't win without reaching out to people and bringing them to the party. So the point of a list is to use it. Your campaign should be contacting supporters regularly, both about ways to learn about your campaign and to get involved, right? So sometimes that means, hey, this event is coming up. Sometimes that means, hey, we just put out this press release on this issue in our community. Sometimes that means, hey, give us money, please. Even if you have a mass of active volunteers, like I said, serious campaigns cost money. Without fundraising, how can you pay for these systems we're talking about? You need at least a little bit of money to get it rolling. And Greens, they have this aversion to fundraising and engaging with their base and new supporters actively and regularly. And it's something we have to get over. We've got to get over it. The marketing person that I worked with on the campaign, on the Hawkins Walker campaign, said that at a minimum 20% of your messaging on social media and on email marketing should be direct donation asks. Social media, we were a little below that, and that was intentional, but email, almost every email should at least have a donate page or a donate button, but then some of them should just be, we need your money, help us do X, Y, and Z. I often hear about this mythical other type of campaign in the Green Party, this no money campaign. But in my experience, I've never seen one that's serious, and I've never seen one that's effective. Right? If you don't have any money, how are you gonna book the hall to have your event? How are you gonna print walk cards? So what a no money campaign leads us to is privileged candidates who can self-fund themselves, right? Which is not a democratic way to do it. You want to have a campaign, and it's why you see progressive Democrats like Bernie Sanders bragging about their small donor numbers versus someone like Biden, right? Having those small donors means that you have the support of the common people, and it provides a level of, democracy and accountability in theory to your campaign. So maybe someday, and the other thing, as I said earlier, that no money campaign is going to be completely based on exploitation. It's going to require everyone that engages with it to do the work for free. So if you want t-shirts, instead of going and buying t-shirts from somewhere, the no money campaign is going to have someone sitting in a basement with a silk screen, breathing in fumes, sweating, and doing it, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with DIY, right? We can have DIY campaigns, but you still need to have some funding. And really, as Greens, need to get away from this aversion. One of my proud points with the 2020 campaign is that we were about middle of the road when it comes to votes. Comparing all Green presidential campaigns, we were about dead middle in terms of how many votes we got. That's without even factoring in, the extreme conditions under which the 2020 campaign happened, right? We couldn't campaign. We couldn't go out in person. We couldn't have fundraisers. And we were facing Trump. People thought anyone but Bush in 2004, after Nader got accused of spoiling it, was bad. It was nothing like anyone but Trump. And in 2016, the Democrats tried to elevate our campaign of Stein Baraka, where they got on CNN, they got on NPR, they got on mainstream media. And I think the hope was that they could get them up there and they could cut them down. But instead, what they did was they found out that our policies are really popular. So in 2020, what we saw was a complete blackout. Mainstream media wouldn't talk to us. Even NPR, public radio, would not even give us the time of day. I think C-SPAN was about one of the only, major outlets that we regularly got covered on. And a big part of that was because of Crystal Ball and Rising, because of one show on C-SPAN. So back to what I'm proud of, we face these incredible conditions which have never been, and COVID, right? COVID obviously threw a wrench in 2020. So we face these incredible, conditions. We were about middle of the road in terms of vote, but we were the best campaign in Green Party history in terms of dollars raised per vote. We were incredibly efficient with our money. And it, so then a big part of it was we were asking about it. We were asking for it, and we were focusing on how we use it. So most CRMs offer donation processing services as part of their suite. So this should be part of the conversation you're having with your state party. When you say, hey, do you have a list? Yeah, we've got a list. Hey, do you have a database? Yeah, we've got a database. Does it do email? Yeah. Does it do fundraising? Yeah. These are early conversations that hopefully your state party is actually, I keep saying you should ask your state party, but hopefully your state party is proactively coming to you and saying, this is what we have to offer. Of the CRMs listed, NationBuilder, ActionNetwork, and CiviCRM, they all offer built-in donation tools. If your state party does not offer this kind of stuff, and if you are not setting up a CRM for some reason, I even, at $10 a month for ActionNetwork, I even caution it giving the option of not setting something up, right? At that low entry level, even a no money campaign can afford it. I can pull $10 out of my pocket every month. And most candidates probably could. So if you're not doing any of that, you can set up PayPal. There's a third-party system called DonorBox that can use Stripe or PayPal that allow you to collect donations on your website. Like I just said, I would strongly recommend at least doing a free to cheap ActionNetwork account to get this stuff going, because then you know that you're collecting the right information. Make sure you're collecting the right information. For example, if you're a federal candidate and you're reporting to the Federal Election Commission, all donors over a certain level, I believe it's $200, they need to provide their employer and their job title. This is federal election law. It's a requirement of them donating. And if you don't collect it in the beginning, if you say, I'm not even going to raise $200, let alone multiple, one person, and then all of a sudden your campaign's rolling and you've got multiple people over $200, you're now going to have to go back, find those people, and find out what their employer and their job title is, right? So it's going to be a whole lot of work as opposed to just adding 2 fields to your form, to your donation form. So you really, and it's hard to talk about fundraising systems on a big scale, to national people that are spread all over, because every state is completely different. Another way that they repress third parties is that we have 50 plus election systems. They all operate on completely different rules, which means that things that work for me in Illinois won't work for you in Texas and won't work in New York and won't work in Hawaii, right? So you got to make sure whatever office you're running for, you're talking to people and you're finding out exactly what you need. Make sure you know what information you need to collect. In Illinois, the rule for non-federal candidates is you don't have to report anything politically until you've raised or spent $5,000. So if you're a campaign that raises less than $5,000, you don't have to do any campaign reporting in Illinois. But the second you hit $5,001, you're going to need the proper information for every single donor. And going back would be a huge amount of work.
So, sorry, just a quick question. So, so as long as, so if you exceed $5,000, then you have to go back and give the information for, so it's better to just do it from the 0 to, okay.
Yeah, and for federal stuff, for adding employer and job title, it's like I said, it's literally adding 2 fields to the form. It's gonna take you 30 seconds as opposed to all of a sudden like dozens, hundreds of hours. And then if people don't respond to you, you can get fined by the Federal Election Commission for not having the information, which now is going to cost you even more money.
Okay.
Yeah. So
maybe it's easier to get a big first donor.
Or just be confident, right? Go into the, if you're running Illinois, go in confident and say, I'm going to raise $5,000 and therefore I'm going to do it right. It's probably a good mentality to go in, right? You want that confidence as a candidate. So a lot of the CRM and the fundraising has all been external focused. And we'll get back to external focused in a second. I might have just froze. Okay, everybody's moving again. So we'll get back to external focused in a second, but I wanted this, the database, the fundraising, these are things you want in place on day one, right? When you announce your candidacy, supporters are going to say, how can I support you? How can I sign up? How can I volunteer? How can I donate? So you need to have this stuff set up on day one when you announce. Another thing that you need to kind of have in place or getting into place at the very early stages of the campaign are your internal communications and your team management stuff. For some campaigns, email lists or interpersonal emails between each other can be effective enough. We had a project management system during the Hawkins Walker campaign. Howie would still email me things, right? Rather than going into the Basecamp and getting into the app and finding out where he needed to go to say it in the appropriate place, he would just send me an email. And that's kind of never going to go away. email, text messages, phone calls. These are kind of like outside of the systems that you want to set up. Because as your campaign grows, as your campaign team grows, these systems are going to be really clunky and ineffective. The good news is there's lots of modern communication systems that allow you to be more organized, that allow you to be more effective in your communications between team members. This can include limiting who's notified about things, right? There's nothing worse than being constantly bugged about things that aren't in your lane, that you're not dealing with. And it for me, it often pulls me into being involved, right? Like I'll get a notification, I'll get put it on an email of something I'm not involved with, and I'll go, whoa, 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 whoa. Now I need to be involved, and I really don't. But because I'm notified, I'm taking off my appropriate tasks. And you can segregate different conversations in different spaces, right? If you just have an email list, talking about ballot access, talking about campaign events, talking about volunteer coordination, unless you build a separate email list serve for each one of those things, it's all going to be in the same place. And it's going to get very muddled. It's going to get very confusing. And then internal communications and project management are essential to smoothly operating an effective campaign. Campaigns are incredibly complex beasts, and it's really easy to have things drop through the cracks. And campaigns are also very spontaneous beasts, right? You can have your whole month planned out, but then something happens and it gets derailed. It's completely outside of your control. So there's many styles and methods to project management. None of them are perfect or correct in every instance, but you really need some form of management technique if you're going to make sure that necessary tasks are being completed and that there's transparency and accountability in there, right? If you have email lists and you're getting 100 emails a day, which for me in the Green Party wouldn't be rare if I resubscribe to the national committee lists, things will just get lost, right? When you're getting a lot of contact when things are going crazy, and it's just via email, now you're sitting there scrolling through, trying who sent me what and what time and what's the subject, so you can find things. Whereas in a project management thing, you say you can have to-dos, or it just pops up and tells you, hey, we wanted you to do this, and set deadlines and all that. So a few different options. On the communication only side, Slack, which is really well known in political organizing, and Flock are similar systems. They are chat-based communication systems with some project management stuff like calendars, and Flock does have a nice to-dos setting. But think of this as like a message board thread or a series of Facebook chats or group texts, where you have, all of these channels, and one will be for, senior level campaign people. One will be for the fundraising team. One will be for ballot access. One will be for events coordination. One will be for volunteers or for volunteer coordinators, and then one will be for the volunteers to communicate with each other. You can set and segregate who's where, who's involved in what conversations in a clear way. You can link to-dos or docs in there. Both Flock and Slack, I mentioned them primarily because for campaigns, they can be used for free. There are limitations in kind of what features you get access to for free. For example, Flock has video calling, but you can only video call one-on-one for free. If you want to have a group like a Zoom, then you need to pay. Then you'll end up paying. The big thing with Flock and Slack and their free versions is both of them allow you to save an archive of 10,000 messages, which seems like a lot. When you tweet or when message 10,001 gets sent, message number 1 gets deleted. When message 10,002 gets sent, message number 2 gets deleted. So as you keep going through your campaign, you'll lose the archive of past conversations. For political campaigns, that might not be such a big deal. For political parties, that's a big deal. Political parties tend to really want access to minutes and past conversations because unlike campaigns, they continue, right? The Green Party of Illinois has been around since 1990. We've been around for 30 years. We obviously would be incredibly limited if we only had 10,000 messages as an archive of our history. And 10,000 messages sounds like a lot. We started on Flock when the Hawkins Walker campaign launched in its exploratory phase. We reached 10,000 messages in less than 2 weeks. Because, and it's a national campaign with a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? So there's a lot of conversation, and a local campaign may never reach 10,000. But what if your campaign really gets moving, if you have a campaign team that develops some camaraderie, right? How 1,000 of those messages could be gift parties. Could be you guys joking around or complaining about something that doesn't have anything to do with work, but is building you as a core team. So that's a big limitation. The other big downside with Slack and Flock is if you want to get away from those free limitations, you have to start paying per user, and then per month. And so it gets, it starts with really small numbers, like $4 or $7 a user. You're like, okay, that's not that bad. But at $4 a user, 25 users, which is a moderate sized campaign team probably, is costing you $100 a month. That's expensive for a grassroots campaign. That's nothing for a mainstream political campaign, right? That's why you'll see Democratic campaigns or Republican campaigns using these systems, because they can just throw the money at it and it doesn't matter. So the larger your team gets, the more it costs. And the reason that we moved away from Flock was because we hit a point where paying for a system that's on the next slide became cheaper. Even though it was more upfront cost, it became cheaper over time once we started adding users. Another option in this kind of communications area is Discord. It's a chat and collaboration system. It allows users to add groups where they can communicate, share documents, just like the channels on Flock or Slack. You can have different groups for different topics for different areas of your campaign. It's free. It also has public spaces, that operate as social media. So in theory, you could find progressive public spaces in Discord and onboard people into your campaign Discord from there. The Green Party has an unofficial Discord, things like that. Discord is very popular in the coding and gaming communities. Coding in particular because of the ability to collaborate on documents, right? You could write your code, you could post it into the Discord, your team members could see it, and they could edit it if they needed to. So those are kind of communication-centric options to, alternatives to email. The other side of this equation is team management or project management. So what we used in the Hawkins Walker campaign after we moved away from Flock is a system called Basecamp. It's feature-rich project and team management platform. If you effectively use Basecamp, you can handle all the communications internally. You can manage projects all from one space. It offers chats, message boards, to-dos, schedules, shared documents, and a bunch of more of other features. We use it in the Young Eco-Socialists as well, and the Illinois Green Party also uses it. So for example, in the Illinois Green Party, we have a base for it's called the Member Hub, and every dues-paying member of the Illinois Green Party is there, and our members actually have the ability to talk to each other in real time every day, which is important for a grassroots movement. But then also each chapter gets their own base. Each campaign gets their own base. Our coordinating committee, our executive committee, our ballot access team, our legal team, our social media and tech team, they all get their own segregated spaces to have conversations and to organize their work. Basecamp costs $100 a month or $1,000 a year. So it's a big upfront cost that is outside of the reach of most smaller green campaigns. Like I said on the previous slide, we got to the point where paying $1,000 for the year was a lot cheaper than paying for Slack or Flock per user. And Basecamp has unlimited growth, unlimited bases. You can add as many people and create as many spaces as you want. What makes Basecamp a little more affordable is that the Young Eco-Socialists, the Green Party's Youth Caucus, offers space rental for $250 a year. So that's it's a quarter of the price. If your state party pays that, that means that they then get to give every campaign that comes through their own spaces to work. You wouldn't have to pay for multiple spaces for multiple campaigns and things like that, which is, goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying that a lot of this stuff needs to be handled by state parties and not by campaigns because of the long-term, longevity of the party, and also the fact that it can centralize the expense and spread out the usage. AirTable is an awesome dynamic project management tool that allows you to view information in many, many ways, from a list to a calendar to a Kanban board. It can be extremely, and if you don't know what a Kanban board is, it's like basically Post-it notes, and you have things you need to do, things that are being worked on, things that are finished, and you can move things through, you can assign them to people, things like that. But in this case, it happens digitally. It can be really helpful for campaigns where you have so many things going on in different places. So in the Hawkins Walker campaign, I actually had a free account for our Airtable that only I really used. No one else in the campaign really looked at it, but it brought Holly's schedule automatically into my calendar, Angela's schedule automatically into my calendar. We had every single state's ballot access petitioning period set up in there, so it showed up. We had every public event that we were going to do. We had, every state convention that we needed. So I was able to pull largely dates and events from multiple different sources, integrate them into this one calendar. I could click and view them as a list. I could click and view them as a calendar, and then I could take them and pull them into a Kanban board and say, okay, we have this event coming up on this day, and I need a graphic made for it. I can assign people, and we can start a project management system on it. And for most green campaigns, the free version should be enough. Trello is another option that a lot of greens have used. It's a Kanban style project management platform, and most greens could use it at the free levels. So it's always good when we can use the free. But these types of systems will help you make sure you know what you're doing and what person A should be doing and what person B should be doing, and track the process. To have some transparency to the work, to have some accountability to the work, and to be able to see everything on a really high level scale. That was what brought me to Airtable. Was I had so many plates running as the social media director that I couldn't keep track of it. And so I was always in there. What's coming up? What's happening in a month? Oh, these 6 states are petitioning right now. So that means I need to be putting up posts for those 6 states, trying to get people to sign petitions and things like that. Shifting back to external, like I said earlier, lists are for using. We've talked about email, right? I've mentioned door knocking and things like that many times, but another key area of political engagement and getting those touches is phone banking and text banking. So in addition to emails, some systems like NationBuilder and ActionNetwork offer their own add-ons where you pay more to get the ability to text bank or to phone bank, but all of them will integrate pretty well with third-party systems. And I'm just going to recommend one on the next slide. But why it's important to have these things integrated is it's important to track these touches, right? If Allison is a voter in my district, I want to know when I knock on her door, oh, she's been talked to on this, about this by this person. She got this email and she opened it, so I know that she knows about the event that's coming up. That history is really important to get into the database, and it's somewhere where greens tend to fall short. We don't tend to really manage our databases. They're just big lists of people. And if we really want them to be effective in targeting and things like that, then we need to make sure that we're adding, data about our voters. So another thing with phone banking and text banking, if possible, think about who you're targeting, right? I'm a millennial. We don't answer our phone. If a number that I don't know calls me, I will not answer it unless I'm expecting a call. And if it is important, you will leave me a message, right? So phone banking, not the most effective method for targeting a millennial, or probably a Generation Z too, but I'm not sure. So you may want to start, if you know the age of someone, you may want to mark them as a text bank rather than getting a phone call. A tried and true spreadsheet can work for this stuff, right? But what it requires is someone then to go in and manually enter the data from the call. So that's where systems come in, right? They stop that grunt work job from being necessary to have a good database by integrating in with your CRM. So what and there's plenty of call services out there. The one I'm experienced with and the one that is used regularly in the Green Party is called CallHub. CallHub is a common phone banking and text banking system. It integrates with most CRMs and it has a low cost per message. Though obviously, you see 3 cents a message, but if you're contacting 10,000 people, you've now got a pretty expensive system, right? It offers an easy interface for volunteers and campaign team members to carry out call and text campaigns. You can have multiple campaigns, right? So one is, for example, during the presidential campaign, when we are doing matching funds in different states, we were trying to get to 20 states that raised over $5,000 in each state. And so we would have specific, this campaign is for calling Minnesota, this one's for calling Ohio, this one's for calling Maryland. So you can cycle people in through different things. And obviously, if you've got a volunteer from Maryland, you have them call Maryland, not Ohio, right? You have them call their people. So for CallHub, the costs, phone banking starts at 6.9 cents per minute, and text banking starts at 3.4 cents per minute, or not per minute, per text. I always, and this goes back to when I said, I really encourage state and local parties to think about what they offer as resources and how systems can fill that role. So I always, encourage people to compare potential, outreach potential and effectiveness of where we're putting our money. For instance, $100 can maybe get you a few dozen yard signs. If you're buying nice yard signs, it'll get you 10, right? So it'll get you a very small number of yard signs. Yard signs, by the way, have shown in research to have almost no effect. They make the people who put them in their yard feel like they got something, but they don't count as a touch, and they don't convert people. They just kind of let your supporters be seen supporting them, which isn't a negative necessarily, but it's not giving you a positive return on your money. On the other hand, $100 can get you 1,400 minutes of phone banking conversations with voters, and it can get you over 2,900 text messages. If you're running a local campaign for Park District, that $100 could text every single person in your district about your campaign. You could reach out, and you could still have more to follow up after. So in my mind, that's a no-brainer, right? That we invest in a system of phone banking and test banking with $100 rather than spend it on something like a yard sign. Now, that could probably also get you 1,000 palm cards. If you're going to use those 1,000 palm cards like a small yard sign and just hang them on windows and things, is probably not worth it. But if you're going to knock 1,000 doors, if you have the volunteers to go knock those doors and put those palm cards in 1,000 people's hands, maybe that's a better use of that $100, right? So a lot of what's more effective is going to be really looking at your unique campaign situation, your volunteer base, your voter base, and the other areas of your campaign that can help you reach people. I just said knocking doors, right? Canvassing. Canvassing, talking directly to voters is a key part of any successful campaign. Phone banking can't replace it. Social media can't replace it. Those are supplemental things that kind of buttress your canvassing. And while it can be done perfectly well, effectively with printed lists and data collected, you then, like I've said multiple times, someone has to enter it, right? So and canvassing tools are expensive, but they're really nice. So if you're using NationBuilder, there's a NationBuilder specific app called Handy Nation. You can download it on iOS or Android phones and tablets. It basically gives you NationBuilder on your phone. And you can say, I'm canvassing, pull up everybody in my area that's in our contact list. And when you do that, it'll give you a map. You can click it and say, I'm at this house. It can pop up and give you fields where you can ask them questions and you can input the answers. It starts at $60 a month, which, for a small campaign is going to be a lot. But if you're running a serious, federal level campaign, it's probably a drop in the bucket of what you need to be spending. eCanvasser is a broader one. It integrates with almost everything, and it does the same kind of thing. It starts at $150 a month. Trailblazer is another one. This is one of those areas where, like, if you Google canvassing apps, you'll get those lists that are like the 20 best, because there's a lot of them. So I'm giving some suggestions, but there are others out there that may better fit. The reason Trailblazer got in here is because it does something cool that always annoys me. At least in Illinois, if you put out a yard sign on, like, the public right-of-way, you're legally required to remove it after the election. And you can be fined if you don't remove it after the election. And I think it's like that in most states. In addition to doing your walk sheets and your digital canvassing app, Trailblazer can track where you put your yard signs. So when you said, my first engagement in a political campaign was when I was 17, and my dad was the campaign manager for one of his friends running for state house. My job in the campaign most of the time was to have hundreds of yard signs loaded into my car and to drive around my rural county putting them at key places. And I was supposed to mark on a map, 10 of them went down here, 10 went here, there's one over here. What Trailblazer lets you do is have basically a Google map open and go, boom, I put one there, boom, I put one there, boom, tag it, boom, tag it. And then after the election, you can pull up the list and you can go collect them all. So it makes that process a little easier. ActionNetwork, which is the one I've been pushing, is really affordable and powerful for small green campaigns, has what's called a kiosk mode, and allows you to create automatically resettable forms that can be used for recording this data. So if you're knocking doors and canvassing, you can have a form set up that says 1 to 5, how much does this person support Medicare for all? 1 to 5, how much do they support Green New Deal? 1 to 5, how much do they support defunding the police? 1 to 5, how much do they support major cuts to our military budget? And as they answer the question at your door, you hit the button, you hit the button, you hit the button, you hit the button. When you're done, you click submit, and you walk to the next door. And when they answer the door, you pull it up, and you don't have to go find them. You don't have to scroll through anything. The forms automatically reset, enter their name, enter their email, and hit the question answers. So it's a cool one, but you kind of have to build it yourself, which is both a benefit and a little more work. So all of this so far has been about talking internally and talking about the people that we have in our lists already, right? The people we already know. So your CRM contains all the people that you already know, unless you bought access to voter rolls or things like that. But in order to build a winning campaign, you've got to bring in new people. You need new supporters. Very few campaigns can win off of their existing base support, outside of the fact that we live in a country where most districts are badly gerrymandered to the point that no matter who runs, the Republican's going to win here and the Democrat's going to win there. Right? They don't need, and that's why they're bad at campaigning. They've rigged the game so they don't have to campaign. They just have to have an R or a D after their name, and they can win in their specially curated district. My congressional district was just redrawn. It's going to end up in textbooks about gerrymandering. It is about probably a 50 to 100 mile strip. It runs from St. Louis at a 45-degree angle up through Illinois for 200 to 300 miles. And they did it because there was a Republican they couldn't beat, and they districted him out. They took his house out of district, and they made it so it caught all the major population, or the middle population centers. We don't have a major population center in downstate, but all the 100,000 person towns were now in this one district, so the Democrats are sure to win it this time. So whether it's signing new people up via physical campaigning, which is tabling, canvassing, talking to your neighbor, digital means like surveys or petitions, buying voter rolls, you should always be growing your database. If your database isn't growing, you're doing something wrong as a campaign, and it's going to be very hard to win. ActionNetwork and NationBuilder both offer list building tools such as signups, petitions, other stuff for digital engagement, right? And there's different levels of growing. One person might just want to get your email list, get on your email list to get updates. One person might want to volunteer. One person might be a donor. And then we just last month did Garrett, who's on the call, and I did an Organizing 101 workshop that you can find on Holly Hawkins YouTube, that we went through talking about systems of moving someone from a supporter to a volunteer to a donor to an organizer, right? So once you get these new people, you have to onboard them, you have to bring them in, you have to actively engage them. And most website platforms and even Google Forms can fill this role of getting the basic contact info. And then there's tools like Do-Gooder that offer robust petitioning and digital activism features. What's cool about Do-Gooder is you can have a campaign where people call or email their representative about an issue, and you provide a script, right? So, stop the war in Ukraine, end the weapons sales. You can set it up so that when Emma clicked it, it popped up her rep, her U.S. House rep in Ohio or in Hawaii, and when Allison clicked it, it sends the email or makes the call to her rep in Texas, and when Garrett clicks it, it sends it to his rep in Pennsylvania. And in the past, what you would do is you kind of, make a call to your representative, click this link to get their phone number. How many people do you lose that don't even click the link, right? And then how many people click the link and then never make the call? So what Do-Gooder does is make it all in one place. Here's a script. Here's a pre-formatted template email. All you got to do is click send if that's all you want to do. Another cool thing about Do-Gooder is that it was started by Greens, ex-Green staffers in Australia. They didn't leave the party like they left, stormed out. They stopped working for the party, went on the side, and created an app that they wanted to have in the party. So it's a green-based thing. Since I said petitions, one thing that people need to understand. If you sign an online petition, its main purpose was to collect your email so that you can be contacted again. When you sign that petition to, you know, from a local group to save the sea turtles, they don't turn it into anybody, right? It's not never, but very few of them print them out and show up at the city council's office and say, look at this stack of petitions we have. Petitions are a data harvesting method, right? It's a way to find out who supports your issue, and most importantly, get a way to contact them directly, right? Which kind of brings us to the next one, social media. The key to organic growth on social media is consistent quality content. Consistency is especially important on Facebook, where the algorithm will really punish you for missing a day, right? So, you know, nobody knows how Facebook algorithm works. It's secret, you know, all that. Same with Twitter and all of them. But what we do know is with Facebook is that how many people you reach is based on how many people the previous post reached. So if you reached 500 people, they'll let you reach 500 on the next one. If you reach 500 and the next one reaches 400, now you're down to 450. The next one reaches 300, now you're down at 350, right? And then the next one reaches 1,000 and you're up. And this is how they get you caught in the game of paying for ads, because when you pay for an ad and double your reach, they expect you to organically reach it the next time. So they punish you if you don't. To achieve that kind of organic growth, planning and scheduling are key. This allows us to have more cohesive content across your platform. It removes your reliance on team members remembering to post something at different times on different accounts. And while Facebook offers some scheduling options and things like that, you know, the things I'm going to suggest are really about doing it all at once. So you don't have to go to Facebook and schedule something, go to Twitter and schedule something, go to Instagram and schedule something. You can, from one space, schedule them all. And kind of, you know, pointing back to that survey thing, social media interaction doesn't provide a concrete way to easily contact new people. If someone likes your post, you could, you know, click their profile name and send them a message. Same with Twitter. You could tweet at them, or retweet at them, or you could send them a message. But that's a pretty heavy way to do this work, right? The one on one for every like. You better have a hell of a social media engagement team to pull that off. So what we need to do with our social media is make sure that we are always pointing back to a place where we can get their contact information, which is almost always our website, right? So read more about it here. And then when they get there, there's sign-up sheets, learn more. There's sign-up sheets, get involved. There's donation portals. There's all that, right? Anytime someone interacts and fills out a form or donates on your website, you get a concrete way to talk to them. Like I said earlier, yard signs don't vote, retweets don't vote, Facebook likes don't vote, and generally they don't count as touches because they're impersonal and they're one directional, right? You want to be able to have a two-directional conversation. That means you need to collect their data. And this is something that Greens are, again, really uncomfortable with for good reason, right? Facebook is a horrible company. The data, they're bankrolling off of our data. But we need to be able to contact people, right? So that means we need to actively try to get their contact information. I mentioned earlier, there'll be on June 5th, there will be a social media campaign training. So we'll get way deeper into there. For engagement on social media, so there's an app called Hootsuite. Hootsuite is amazing. I love Hootsuite. We're still using it in the Hawkins campaign after the election, and I told our campaign manager when the campaign was winding down, and they said, what can we get rid of? I said, never get rid of Hootsuite. If we get rid of Hootsuite, I'm going to stop doing social media. because it'll make my life that much harder. But it gives you a calendar, and you can schedule across multiple platforms at once. So I can type out, join us for this event on Sunday for a systems workshop, and hit enter, and we'll schedule it for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all at once. If I want to tag the Green Party, I can do it individually with each one and hit it and do it all at once. The problem is, and this is kind of across the board with social media scheduling, they're getting expensive. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I did this workshop, I'd be telling Greens, the free version of Hootsuite's all most of you need, right? It can let you schedule out 5 days in advance for 3 platforms, and that's all most Green parties need, right? But they've raised their prices, and now it costs you $50 to get a worthwhile, $50 a month to get a worthwhile tool out of Hootsuite. So as much as I love Hootsuite, it's kind of going by the wayside in terms of a viable tool. Now, if you have a good campaign and you can spend $50 a month, I highly recommend it. But I also don't think, back when I always used to suggest that, the entry level was $15 a month, which is much more affordable. $50 is a stretch. TweetDeck, very similar to Hootsuite, but it operates just on Twitter, and you can use it for free. Buffer has a free plan that offers up to 3 social media platforms, which almost all that's mostly what all campaigns will need, right? Most campaigns aren't going to have much, they'll all have the Facebook, the Twitter, and hopefully the Instagram. So you can do all 3 of those, and you can schedule up to 10 posts per platform at a time. So that gives you a few days, probably 3 to 5 days of scheduled stuff. For $5 a platform per month, you can get more scheduled features, which means if you've got those 3 platforms for $15 a month, you can then get a lot more in terms of scheduling. The one area it's short, but Hootsuite is awesome at, when you're in Hootsuite, you can see your streams of every single thing you've got. As people comment, you can reply. As people message you, you can reply, all from within Hootsuite. Buffer only does the scheduling. They don't do that communication side. This is another one of those areas. If you type Hootsuite alternatives into Google, you'll get dozens, right? So it's about finding what's best for you. My curating on this list is primarily about cost. I'm trying to provide systems at a low cost for the Green Party. So it may not be the best system, but it's an affordable system. All right, if you want the best, I'd say go with the Hootsuite. If you can't afford $50 a month, Buffer can do it for you. We kind of already talked about this, but your website is the main digital space in which new people can engage with you in a way that will allow you to continue contact. Your website should be easy to navigate, clearly convey your positions, and offer multiple ways for people to engage with you. You need to have those different levels of engagement. Hey, I just want to get emails. Hey, I want to volunteer. Hey, I want to host an event. Hey, I want to donate. So you need to allow, and the same goes for physical organizing, right? If you have a local party, you want to be, when a new person comes in, you want to be able to say, on this date, we have our business meeting. It's kind of boring, but it's how the party runs. On this date, we have a social event where we all just kind of get together, have some drinks, and talk about green politics. On this date, we're having an event that we're co-sponsoring with this group that we work with all the time, right? So now that's 3 ways this month that someone can get involved in your party in 3 different ways, right? Not everybody's going to sit through a business meeting. Not everyone cares about systems. Not everyone's going to be a tech developer or a web developer for you. Not everybody's at the level where they're ready to fully jump in, and you can, by going to a social hour at the local pizza place where you all order pizzas and sit around and talk for a few hours, you can have those one-on-one conversations to get them to go, you know what, I will pay it. I will sign up. I will take that next step. And you need the same thing on your website. You need this multiple layers of levels of interaction. Like on Facebook and Twitter, it boosts your stats on those platforms, but doesn't get you that direct contact. So these forms are really important to growing your list. And while another thing to keep in mind here, while social media and quick in-person interactions work best with short form content, right? If you're knocking on a door, you want to be able to just hand somebody, here's the event, here's the flyer, or not even at a door. If you're at a tabling at a festival where people are just walking up, you want them to be able to grab your information and walk away, or see what or get the idea of what you're saying without spending an hour talking to you. And the same goes for social media. Twitter limits you to 280 characters. It's part of the reason why Twitter is the cesspool, right? It makes it so you can't have nuanced conversation. It rewards the loudest and the most obnoxious. It stifles real discourse. So clearly, Twitter isn't great for having long form conversation. And the same goes with like Instagram, with the graphic, right? I had so many fights when I was designing graphics during the campaign where people were like, we need this, 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 and this in the graphic. And I'm like, you're gonna have 3-point font that can't be read, right? A social media graphic is scanned past. So they need to be able to see it, and they need a link to click to find out more information. So the website provides that long form source, right? Abolish ICE. But what do you have your graphic? Click to see what we mean by that, right? Because AOC said abolish ICE, and then she voted to fund them, right? There was just a slogan. We need a Green New Deal. Well, when the Democrats say that, they mean we need corporate welfare where we pay corporations to be more green. When you go to our eco-socialist budget, HowieHawkins.us, what you find is that we're talking about nationalizing major industry. We're talking about complete overhauls of every sector, from agriculture to transportation to manufacturing. We're talking about zero waste factories. We're talking about planting trees and how we can draw carbon out of the air and put it back into the soil. We're talking about completely different things, but we could have the same graphic, right? We have that same slogan since the Democrats co-opted Green New Deal from us and then forgot about it, right? So the website allows you that the social media gives you that initial access point where you want to get their attention and you want them wanting more. And the website provides you the availability to have that deep conversation about policy. And then when they're like, wow, right? The first time you read Howie's Green New budget, you go, whoa, 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 whoa. We could actually achieve 100% clean energy across all sectors by 2030. It's budgeted in a balanced budget right here. It includes information on the taxes that would pay for it, the cuts that will be made, the programs that would be funded. And you go from Green New Deal being a slogan to saying, I want to get involved with that. And luckily, right there on that Green New Deal page is a sign-up form. Right up at the top is a volunteer button. Right up at the top is a donate button, right? So when you hook them with that long-form content, then we can get those contact information. Like CRM, ask your state party if they offer something. WordPress is a long-running template-based website platform. This is another one. The note at the bottom is there for a lot of systems, right? There's a lot of options. WordPress is free-ish in that if you have hosting, you can install WordPress for free. If you don't, you're going to pay a nominal fee to have them host it for you. And to do that, lets you get your branded domain, right? Like HowieHawkins.us instead of HowieHawkins.wordpress.com. Much more professional to have your own name. And it costs you like $15 if you buy a domain. If you buy a domain, get the privacy protection because you will get spammed like crazy. I have a domain that has my name in it, and I was like, I don't need privacy. My name's in it. Oh my God. I'm constantly getting emails. Help us build your website. It's already built, right? Because it gets listed on a database. But so WordPress is by far the largest market share in template-based web sites. It started off with blogs, but it's become very powerful for building any kind of website you want. It's got a huge user base because it's been around a long time. And if there's something you can't figure out how to do in WordPress, there's probably a plugin for it where you can say, oh, I don't like how this works. Somebody's had that problem and has created a solution. So WordPress is easy. Wix is a newer player in the website game that uses templates. Wix makes very good looking websites. It's got a lot less features. and more limitations than WordPress when you talk about the free to free-ish options. Coming towards the close, but content creation, right? We just talked about graphics. In today's digital world, content creation is more important now. From traditional physical materials to yard signs and palm cards, digital content, social media posts, website graphics, video editing, quality content's really key to doing outreach. If you have team members who have experience in a specific design platform, let them use it, right? At the beginning of the Hawkins Walker campaign, we got Adobe Spark, which is their online graphic design thing. And I was really excited because I've used Photoshop for a decade, but in the end, I almost never used Spark because I had 10 years of experience in another platform. So don't try to make someone who comes in and says, I use this, like, oh, no, well, we use this. Let people use what they're comfortable in, especially if they're volunteers. And also, don't be afraid to curate content from other sources. If you don't have the capacity to make graphics on your own, share news stories and comment on them, right? Come to Howie's page, go to the Green Party page, go to your state party page, where there's a little more capacity, and see what they have to share, right? Because as I said earlier, it's about consistent content. If you skip a day, you're hurting yourself. So if you don't have anything ready for tomorrow, see what Howie posted today and schedule something to share, right? A few really quick ones for graphic and video. Canva, like I said, if someone uses Photoshop, awesome, let them keep using it. If someone doesn't use Photoshop, I don't know that you're going to buy a professional level program, though it's a lot cheaper now with their Adobe Cloud. It used to be you'd have to spend $600 to get someone Photoshop, right? Now it's like probably $20 a month, but Canva is a web-based free graphic design program. It's great for on-the-go graphic design. It's user-friendly, it's quick to produce high-quality graphics. Allison uses it, I know. The thing I always talk about people with Canva is, so save your logo, your campaign's logo in your Canva, and your candidate's out giving a speech, or your candidate's out at a protest or a rally, and you take a picture. You can very quickly throw that picture in the Canva, crop it to the appropriate size, pop your logo on it, and then put a quote from your candidate's speech up, and in 5 minutes have a social media ready graphic while you're standing on the street at the protest still, right? You don't have to go home. You don't have to load up Photoshop. You don't have to download the photo from your phone. You don't have to export it and then upload and all that. You can do it all from your phone. So especially for simple stuff, I could create a much more intricate graphic in Photoshop than I could Canva. But for 99% of the work that is done, Canva is probably more than enough. GIMP, G-I-M-P, is a free graphic design program. It's deeper than Canva, way bigger learning curve. It's kind of the open source alternative to Photoshop and Illustrator. For video editing, I recommend Lightworks. Movies there's a free version. I use the free version to do mine. Once you get the hang of it, it's super quick to do video editing. And movies like Reservoir Dogs were made in Lightworks, right? So it's free, but it's got some serious chops. And then streaming, right? So we've done, for content, we've created, graphics. We've edited videos into kind of more production, higher level production stuff. And then there's streaming. Streaming is a central format of content today, whether live streaming from an event or doing interviews or just checking in with supporters. It's loved by social media algorithms, and it can help connect you to your base and help personalize you, right? Howie is really loved by a really devoted group of people who watch his stream every week, who watch streams during the campaign. I've worked very closely with Howie, obviously, for the last few years, and I love him, but Howie can be kind of an awkward policy wonk person. And if you're only reading Howie, it can be kind of, impersonal and kind of sterile. But when you meet Howie and you see him on a stream, and he's dynamic and he's engaging and he cares and laughs with people when they ask questions in the comments. You know, it personalizes him a lot more. It makes him a lot more human, which is the rawness of streaming is what allows that. And I always tell people, especially in terms of Facebook, images are good, video is king, and streaming is God. That is how much they value, you know, streaming, and how much they boost up your streams versus just posting a video. Most social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, have their own built-in live streaming tools, but the problem is those tools limit you to only streaming there, right? So if I'm on Facebook and I start a live stream, it's streamed on Facebook, and that's great, but it's not streamed to YouTube, it's not streamed to Twitter, it's not streamed to Twitch. Instagram has kind of cut off a lot of these streaming programs where they can't access it, but the rest haven't. So StreamYard and Restream are two similar tools that allow for easy scheduling and then producing live streams that are really professional looking, and send them to multiple platforms at once. Both offer a free version that many green campaigns can work. Like if you use the free version of StreamYard, you're going to have a little duck up in the corner that says powered by StreamYard. You know, that's the cost of free, is that they get to promote. You pay $15 a month though, and that goes away and you get more access to things. And they're really great because they let you quickly switch between views. They let you overlay, you know, this is Chris Blankenhorn talking, and then he is the tech director of Hawkins 2020. He's from Springfield, Illinois. And with a click of a button, you can switch these things. You can create banners and graphics and overlays on the fly. And then the other option I'm putting on here is OBS Studio. It is that open source alternative, right? You can stream to multiple platforms. You can do a lot of really cool stuff. You can actually get deeper and more production oriented with OBS than you can StreamYard or Restream, but it's a lot harder to get to work. There's a lot more things that can break, you know, and so it's harder to get those broad features that you get working smoothly. The other side of content, I'll call it, is merchandise. Whether it's t-shirts, yard signs, merchandise can help your supporters be seen being green. I'm also the ex-co-chair of the Green Party US Merchandise Committee. So be sure that one thing to make sure that you're conscious of the difference between for sale merchandise and freebies, right? When you go to it, when you table at an event, you want to have buttons and things that people can take. But if you're relying on selling those buttons and you give them all away, you can't get more. So it's not that you shouldn't have freebies. It's just that you need to be conscious of what you're buying things for and how much you need to make and things like that. Merchandise can be super overwhelming for small campaigns, but it can also provide an additional source of revenue if you figure it out. The next slide, I'm going to give a quick one, but I put together a green merchandise guide. There's a link. I'll put it in the chat. And that's just a PDF, and it goes way more in depth of the different ways you could run a merchandise program as a green, from that hardcore DIY dude in the basement with a screener, all the way up to you know, everything's handled for you. So in my opinion, the best solution for green campaigns is going to be a local print shop. They exist everywhere. Most communities have shops, union or not, that can handle the needs of the average green campaign. Most of these shops can do your t-shirts, as well as your buttons, as well as your, you know, magnets, as well as your printed materials that you hand out when canvassing. If you can't find a local print shop, there's also online services like Printful or Cafe Press. A million options here, right? There's so many places that you can set up online stores. One thing to consider is these are often not union places, and they're not often US made operations, which some green campaigns care about. So in the example of the National Party, we have a really strict, everything we sell is US union made. The t-shirt you buy is printed in a worker-owned union shop, and the T-shirt that it's printed on is printed on a union-made U.S. line that makes the actual law that at a textile mill, right? And that really, really limits us. It makes our stuff expensive, and it makes it hard to find providers. So there's real value to having a serious conversation about whether or not to use. It's better to use something like Printful, where you're not getting that union guarantee, but you might be able to get things like a recycled T-shirt or an organic T-shirt that you can't get union made in the U.S. One example I'll give is we were looking for water bottles, and people really wanted stainless steel water bottles. So I talked to our merch people, and my merch guy said, I can get them for you. They're going to be expensive, and they're not going to be U.S. made, because stainless steel is such a toxic process. It can't really be made in the United States. Anything you have that's stainless steel is almost invariably foreign made. So he said that's why we don't carry it, because of the environmental impact and because it's not a U.S. made product. So these are the kind, it's not a black and white thing in terms of how our values land. It has a lot to do with capacity. It has a lot to do with, for better or worse, picking and choosing what values are important to us at a given time for a given purpose. If you're looking for that full service merchandise operation that does everything, the Green Party US uses a group called FII, which is Financial Innovations. Everything we get to them is made in the US. The raw materials are made in the US union shop. They are printed or created, the final material in a US union shop, and then they actually fulfill our orders. We don't have shirts sitting in an office somewhere. An order on gp.org comes in, it gets sent to them, and a unionized warehouse worker walks to the pallet, gets what you need, and sends it out to you. So that is on the high end scale, and that's what the National Party uses. But it's there and it's available, and if people wanted to talk to them, I think I have an email in that guide, but I'm more than happy to help hook people up with FII. Maybe if enough Greens use them, will be a little more of a blip on their radar in terms of costs. So to close out, I'm moving away from campaigns, but almost, as I've said a few times, almost all of the systems I've talked about in this presentation, in my opinion, should be maintained by our national and state parties, not by campaigns. In this way, the systems have a long-term home outside of the finite lifespan of campaigns, and we're sure that we're not wasting our limited resources by building in parallel rather than having collective systems of infrastructure. That said, campaigns offer a more flexible area to experiment, right? So state parties and national parties need to be willing to listen and to try out the systems that are introduced to their campaigns, right? Parties, part of being a long-serving entity is that they get stuck in their ways, right? How long have we fought in the Green Party about getting off of email lists, right? It's a constant battle, and it's been going on for a decade and a half probably. But the party is set in its ways, so it's hard to get the shift. Campaigns offer a way to do things a little differently, to try things out that aren't being used in the party, and it might fail, it might work. But when they work as a party, you've got to be willing to jump in and say, okay, that was impressive how you used that tool. Can you talk to us about how to use it? Can we take over your account? How do we get this integrated with our system, right? Party maintained resources also offer a positive resource for our candidates and local chapters that can help them grow while connecting everything they do into our larger systems. So when the Sangamo Valley Green Party does something, the Illinois Green Party is benefiting from it as well. When the Cook County Green Party does it, the Illinois Green Party does it as well, and vice versa. When the Illinois Green Party does something, everything filters down. So we can have these positive resources that we can provide. When there are common systems as well, new volunteers and organizers can move easily between a campaign and a party. If you're using a different database in the party than the campaign, it's going to be a pain in the ass. You have to learn something new. you're going to have people just say, I'm not doing that, and walk away. So it can really help us retain people. It can help us do something that Greens need to become a lot better at, and that is transitioning campaign organizers and volunteers and supporters into party organizers and supporters. And if we have common systems and they come in and they say, I'm used to all of the stuff that you're doing, it's going to be a much easier transition than a hard right turn and doing things in a completely different direction. So our national state parties should be seriously evaluating how we use our very limited resources and how we can create integrated collective systems and tech to offer way more bang for our buck as we grow going on. So that's the end of what I have. Like I said, I've done these for years. You can go to bit.ly/DOT-info, and you can see past year's presentations. You can also see kind of systems lists where I just make big lists of everything I've talked about. I will note, I have to go through and update some of those where prices have changed and things like that. And I just ran out of time with a 9-month-old to actually get to it before the end of this. And then this is the first of, so far we have 6 of these campaign trainings scheduled. We have 2 each month, one at the beginning of the month that is kind of more internal campaign focused like this. And then the second one each month is on an issue, and we're calling them candidate crash courses. And the idea is that we can have an expert like next week on, hi River, baby came to see me. Next week on the 17th at 3 p.m., Sunday the 17th at 3 p.m., we're gonna have Howie Hawkins on talking about the Green New Deal. And the goal is to have an expert on a topic come in and present, give a short presentation, and then facilitate a discussion around that topic so that our candidates are able to, whether you're in Hawaii or Pennsylvania or Texas, all of our candidates can talk about the Green New Deal in similar ways and similar policies, and we can start to develop a common language in which green candidates, no matter where they are engaging on these issues, which will make us way better at, getting our messaging down. So you can see more about those, register for them all at greensocialist.net/campaign trainings. I don't have a slide for it, but Garrett and I are also doing 101s. So if you are, new to the Green Party and want to learn more, on Tuesday, the 26th of this month at 8 p.m., Garrett and I are going to be doing a Green Party 101 workshop on Zoom. If you go to greensocialist.net/101s with an S on the end of 101, you can register for those Zoom calls. So April will be Green Party, May will be socialism, and June will be organizing. And those are kind of hope we're laying the groundwork for some of these things that, getting people on board into the party, creating that common understanding. The Green Party 101, Garrett and I will talk about the history of the party, the policies of the party, the structure of the party, and then dive into a discussion on, where people can ask about specifics or say, this is happening in my state party, and can get some, more experienced Greens to answer their questions and provide advice. So yeah, you can find out, about all this at greensocialist.net. You can sign up for our email list, and you'll get emails from me about what's coming up. Yeah, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
No, but thank you so much for this presentation. Was awesome. So I really appreciate you.
Awesome. Yeah. And if anybody has any follow-up questions or anything like that, I just put my email is chris@howiehawkins.us. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy to help people get kind of their feet planted on the ground and getting involved with the Green Party, because it can be a lot. And like I said earlier in the call, if there's a state party or a local party or a campaign that want some specific, advice on what things they could use, I'm happy to set up a more direct or a more focused call just for them, where I can chat with the campaign team or chat with the party organizers and help them work out what kind of things can fit into what kind of systems. So with that, thank you everybody for coming. It was nice to meet you, Emma. Garrett and Allison, I'll see you in the chats. And have a good night.